In 1827, the quiet village of Polstead, Suffolk, became the center of a mystery that quickly unsettled its close-knit community. Maria Marten vanished without warning, and her absence did not go unnoticed among neighbors accustomed to the rhythms of rural life. William Corder, her lover, claimed she'd eloped to the Isle of Wight, assuring everyone she was safe and well. But behind these reassurances, Maria's stepmother was haunted by vivid nightmares, visions of Maria's body buried beneath the red barn. Her stepmother's persistent visions would soon unmask a killer and ignite one of England's most notorious 19th century crime stories, all set against the backdrop of a seemingly tranquil village. Maria Marten came from a working-class family in the village of Polstead, Suffolk. Her father, Thomas Marten, was a mole catcher, a modest but respectable trade. The Marten family lived a simple life, relying on practical skills and local connections. Maria, though young and attractive, was well aware of the limitations placed on her by her social standing. She became known throughout Polstead, where her beauty was both admired and criticized in equal measure. By the time she was 23, Maria had borne 2 illegitimate children. One of these children was fathered by Thomas Corder, the brother of William Corder, the wealthy local farmer. The other child was fathered by Peter Mayhew, a man from a respectable landowning family in the area. Peter's sister was the landlady to whom the Corders paid rent, establishing a connection between the Mayhew and Corder families. The fact that one of Maria's children was fathered by Thomas Corder and the other by Peter Mayhew further complicated her situation, embroiling her in a scandal that reverberated through the village. In a society where a woman's reputation and respectability were directly tied to her marital status and the legitimacy of her children, Maria's circumstances left her vulnerable. The village of Polstead was small and conservative, and gossip spread quickly, casting a long shadow over Maria's life. Despite her charm, she was marked by social stigma, and her options for security and respectability were limited. William Corder, the son of a wealthy farmer, appeared to live a life of privilege in Polstead. His family's farm afforded them a certain respectability, but William himself was a man set apart by a persistent sense of unease that followed him wherever he went. Behind his outward respectability and charm was a man known for deceit and manipulation. His social standing allowed him to mask his true nature, but those who knew him well could see through the facade. Corder was a man of dubious morals, and his actions spoke louder than any charm. From a young age, William's reputation for cunning was already established. At school, he was nicknamed Foxy, a moniker that reflected not just his cleverness, but also his tendency to manipulate and deceive others. This was not a harmless trait. Even as a young man, William showed a willingness to cross boundaries that others would not. One of the earliest signs of his character was the unauthorized sale of his father's pigs. In a close-knit community like Polstead, where livestock represented both trust and livelihood, such an act was a serious betrayal. His father was forced to repay the money to the buyer, but the damage to William's reputation couldn't be easily undone. As he matured, his deceitful actions only grew more audacious. William later passed a forged check for £93, a significant sum at the time. These incidents were not isolated mistakes. They were part of a broader pattern of dishonesty and fraud. Corder had no qualms about using deceit as a tool to further his own interests, regardless of the cost to others. Corder's reputation as a ladies' man added another layer to his character. He was known for his charm with women, a charm that was not merely social, but carefully calculated. In a village like Polstead, where everyone knew each other's business, his ability to win trust and affection while concealing his true intentions made him all the more dangerous. His flirtations were not innocent. They were part of his manipulation, a means of securing the loyalty of those he could later exploit. This calculated charm and manipulation formed the core of Corder's interactions with Maria Marten. He promised to marry her, but his intentions were never sincere. His promises were merely a guise, to keep her close, to use her trust for his own advantage. His relationship with Maria, alongside his dealings with the other men in her life, his brother Thomas, and the landowner Peter Mayhew, only deepened the web of deceit that surrounded him. To those around him, Corder was the epitome of respectability, but to Maria, and others who crossed his path, he was a man of untrustworthy character, adept at hiding his true nature until it was too late. Maria's relationship with Corder began around March 1826. For Maria, the promise of a future with someone from a more established family may have offered hope for stability. The social pressures she faced, along with her personal circumstances, likely influenced her willingness to believe in Corder's assurances. But Corder's track record suggested he was not interested in a straightforward partnership. His interactions with Maria were shaped by the same tendencies that had defined his earlier behavior: manipulation, secrecy, and a willingness to deceive. As their relationship developed, the differences in their backgrounds and the community's expectations created a tension that neither could escape. Maria sought security and acceptance, while Corder seemed intent on maintaining control over the narrative, both with Maria and with those around them. The stage was set for a series of decisions that would have lasting consequences for both families. It was against this backdrop of mistrust, social pressure, and hidden motives that William Corder began to outline a plan for Maria. A plan that would center on the Red Barn and lead to events no one in Polstead could have anticipated. Maria Marten's disappearance began with a promise that would never be fulfilled. On May 18th, 1827, Maria dressed as William's groom and walked to the Red Barn, never to return. The arrangement had been for secrecy. Corder told Maria they would elope to Ipswich to marry, and insisted she tell no one, not even her family. The last sighting of Maria was her heading toward the barn, her future uncertain and unseen by those who cared for her. In the days that followed, Maria's absence was met with uncertainty in the Marten household. Her family had little information to act on, and William Corder quickly set about constructing a narrative to explain her disappearance. He sent a series of letters to the Martens, each crafted to reassure and mislead. For months, Corder's letters claiming she was well on the Isle of Wight kept her family at bay. Sometimes he wrote that Maria was unwell, other times that she was settling into her new life, or that a letter had been lost in the post. The details shifted, but the message remained the same. Maria was alive, married, and safe. These letters were effective. The Martens, receiving regular updates from Corder, hesitated to raise alarm or begin a search. The steady correspondence created the illusion of normalcy and bought Corder valuable time. The family's hope was sustained by his words, despite a growing sense of unease, as the months passed with no direct word from Maria herself. As the year wore on, the strain of Maria's absence deepened, especially for her stepmother, who was also named Anne Marten. The family's patience was tested by the lack of tangible evidence that Maria was safe. By spring 1828, nearly 11 months after Maria vanished, Anne began to experience recurring, vivid dreams. These were not fleeting or indistinct. They were detailed and persistent, always returning to the same grim vision. In these unsettling dreams, Anne saw Maria's body buried within the red barn. The visions were specific, often locating the remains in a particular storage bay inside the barn, the very place where Maria had last been seen. Anne's conviction grew with each dream. She became certain that these were not merely products of grief or imagination, but messages pointing to the truth of what had happened to her stepdaughter. Anne's insistence on the accuracy of her dreams was met with skepticism by those around her. In the early 19th century, dreams were not accepted as evidence, and many in Polstead attributed her experiences to the strain of loss and worry. Despite this, Anne's belief did not waver. The dreams recurred with such clarity and consistency that she felt compelled to act, even as others doubted her. The tension in the Marten household increased as Anne pressed her husband, Thomas, to investigate. She described the exact location within the red barn where she believed Maria was buried. For nearly a year, Corder's letters had been enough to hold off suspicion, but Anne's unwavering certainty finally overcame the family's hesitation. The specificity of her visions, combined with the absence of any word from Maria herself, forced the family to confront the possibility that something terrible had happened. The decision to search the red barn did not come easily. It was a step taken only after months of anxiety, uncertainty, and mounting pressure from Anne's dreams. The family weighed the doubts of neighbors and the risk of disturbing the community's peace, but Anne's conviction left little room for further delay. It was this combination of persistent deception by William Corder and the disturbing clarity of Anne Marten's dreams that brought the Marten family to a turning point. Their decision to search the barn would soon bring hidden truths to light, setting off a chain of events that would draw the attention of both local authorities and the wider public. On April 19, 1828, Thomas Marten entered the red barn with a spade, guided by the persistent insistence of his wife Anne's dreams. He focused his search on the grain storage bay she had described. Breaking through the compacted earth, he soon discovered a sack buried beneath the floor. Inside were human remains. The body, though badly decomposed, was identified as Maria Marten through remnants of her hair, her clothing, and a missing tooth, details her family recognized immediately. Anne's persistent visions proved true when her husband unearthed Maria's remains. The scene inside the barn was grim. Authorities found Maria's body still clothed, the remains arranged in a way that suggested a hurried burial. Among the most significant evidence was a green handkerchief tied tightly around her neck. This handkerchief was later identified as belonging to William Corder. The presence of this item, along with the physical condition of the body, pointed to a violent end. The indictment against Corder would eventually specify that Maria had been strangled, shot with a pistol, and stabbed with a dagger. These details, combined with the evidence at the scene, left little doubt about the brutality of the attack. An inquest was held at the Cock Inn in Polstead. There, the remains were formally identified as Maria Marten's. The handkerchief, the state of the body, and the other personal effects found in the grave became central to the investigation. The focus of suspicion shifted immediately and intensely to William Corder, whose connection to Maria and his sudden disappearance from the village now appeared in a new, more sinister light. Meanwhile, in London, William Corder had tried to distance himself from his past in Polstead. He placed a matrimonial advertisement in the Times and other newspapers, seeking a wife. He received a large number of replies and eventually married Mary Moore. Together, they opened a girls' school in Brentford, with Corder presenting himself as a respectable schoolmaster. This attempt to build a new life was short-lived. Polstead Constable Ayres enlisted Bow Street officer James Lee to track down Corder. Their search led them to Everley Grove House, the boarding school Corder was running in Brentford. Leah surprised Corder at breakfast and placed him under arrest. The capture was swift and left little room for escape. A search of Corder's residence followed his apprehension. Investigators found a pair of pistols, one of which had reportedly been purchased on the day Maria disappeared. They also discovered letters addressed to Corder from a Mr. Gardner, which appeared to contain warnings about the crime in Polstead coming to light, and a passport issued by the French ambassador. These items suggested Corder may have been preparing to flee once again as the investigation closed in. The unearthing of Maria's body, and the evidence found with it, especially the green handkerchief, made a compelling case against William Corder. While Maria's family and the authorities in Suffolk were searching for answers, Corder had tried to reinvent himself in London. His arrest and the discovery of incriminating items in his possession ended any hope of escape. With William Corder now in custody and the evidence mounting, the community braced for a trial that promised to draw attention far beyond Polstead. The trial of William Corder began at Shire Hall in Bury St. Edmunds, August 7, 1828. Interest in the proceedings was intense, drawing crowds from across the region. The presiding judge warned about the effects of widespread pre-trial publicity, but the public's fascination with the Red Barn case only grew as testimony unfolded. The prosecution's case relied on a combination of compelling witness testimony and physical evidence. Anne Marten described the events leading up to Maria's disappearance and recounted her recurring dreams that had pointed to the Red Barn. Her account was supported by Thomas Marten, who described the moment he uncovered his daughter's remains in the barn. George Marten testified that he had seen Corder with a loaded pistol before Maria vanished, and later with a pickaxe near the barn. These family testimonies established a timeline and context that placed Corder at the center of suspicion. A crucial piece of evidence was the green handkerchief found tied around Maria's neck, which was identified as belonging to William Corder. The prosecution argued that this, along with the circumstances of the burial and the items found at Corder's London residence, directly linked him to Maria's death. James Lee, the officer who arrested Corder, gave details about the capture and the discovery of pistols and a passport, suggesting Corder had been preparing to flee. The prosecution maintained that Corder had no intention of marrying Maria, and that her knowledge of his past crimes, including a forged check, may have given her leverage over him. Corder's defense was brief. He admitted to being in the Red Barn with Maria on the day she died, but claimed that during an argument, Maria shot herself with his pistol. He insisted that her death was a tragic accident and denied any intent to harm her. Corder appealed to the jury for understanding, but did not provide an alternative explanation for the evidence against him, including the handkerchief and the hurried burial. The jury deliberated for only 35 minutes before returning a verdict of guilty. The sentence was death by hanging. After his conviction, Corder spent several days in prison. Following days of pressure from his wife, the prison chaplain, and the governor, he ultimately provided a written confession. In his statement, Corder admitted to killing Maria Marten, but maintained that the shooting was accidental and happened during a struggle. He denied stabbing her, as had been suggested during the trial. The confession did not alter the outcome, but it provided a final account of the events from Corder's perspective. On August 11, 1828, William Corder was executed in Bury St. Edmunds. The execution drew a massive crowd, with thousands gathering to witness the event. Before the hanging, Corder publicly acknowledged his guilt and accepted his sentence. After the execution, his body was taken to Shire Hall, where crowds filed past his exposed body. The following day, his corpse was dissected before an audience of medical students and physicians, a practice intended as both punishment and deterrent. The Red Barn trial became a matter of public obsession, not only for the details of the crime and the dramatic confessions, but also for the way it exposed the intersection of personal betrayal, community suspicion, and sensational justice. The events surrounding Maria Marten's death and William Corder's conviction left an impression that extended far beyond the courtroom, ensuring that the Red Barn murder would not be forgotten. Public fascination with the Red Barn murder didn't end with the trial. William Corder's execution in 1828 drew huge crowds, with broadsides recounting the crime reportedly selling over 1 million copies. That year alone, 200,000 visitors came to Polstead, many collecting souvenirs from the Red Barn, where Maria Marten's body was discovered. The barn became a morbid tourist destination, symbolizing betrayal and death. Sadly, the Red Barn burned down in 1842, leaving no physical trace of the crime. The case inspired a wave of commercial and artistic responses, with folk ballads, stage melodramas keeping the story alive throughout the 19th century. Today, a museum in Polstead displays macabre artifacts, including a bust of William Corder, a book bound in his skin, and the pistol used in the murder, items that continue to attract those fascinated by the dark history of the case. The Red Barn murder also inspired numerous films, plays, and documentaries, ensuring its place in popular culture. Its mix of betrayal, cunning, and tragic death remains a powerful draw, reflecting society's enduring fascination with stories that blur the lines between fact, fear, and folklore. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more, consider supporting us on Patreon, and you'll get access to exclusive content and more. Just head over to Patreon and click the link in the description to join the community. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.